How did this happen? Many are wondering how one of the largest retail technology and software providers, CDK Global, was hit with cyber attacks. While we may not know the answer to that question for some time, joining us now is Mike Perkins, who's the Chief Information Security Officer at North Rock Security, who's been working with retail automotive dealers for 30 years. He joins us now to lend insight into cyber attacks and his recommendations for dealers that are out there. And if you weren't paying attention before as a dealer about cyber attacks, Mike, you are today, right?
Absolutely, yeah. There has for sure been a change in focus on that.
That's right.
In fact, with the FTC safeguards requirements, a lot of the prevailing notion was, well, how can we check these boxes and be compliant so the FTC does not come after us? And so the program that we actually put together was a security first that will achieve compliance, because it's very easy to achieve compliance but make absolutely no dent in your security stance.
Right.
And so we came up with a done for you FTC safeguards compliance program, because automotive dealers, they just want to sell cars. I get it. I get it. Security is not fun for anyone. As unobtrusive as you can make it, the better it is.
That's right.
But it does have to be there, because bottom line, and as the FTC says, you're a bank.
Yeah.
You are essentially no different than Wells Fargo.
Right. Except you don't deal necessarily in cash, but you do with customers' data, right?
Sure.
Having said that, what do you recommend dealers do today to safeguard themselves against their own dealer group being penetrated like this?
Well, a lot of it goes back to the core requirements of the FTC safeguards are good. There are a few things in there where you're like, we probably could have put our effort somewhere else.
Sure.
And so, the two-factor was huge. The requiring of the EDR antivirus type instead of just Norton or whatever, a little off the shelf.
Are there any practices that you suggest to dealers though in terms of their staffs? I mean, so many times you'll hear that an attack came in through an email that was opened or forwarded, or employees, didn't know better. They were never told or trained. So every dealership's got 100 or 200 people working for them. You've got 200 different points of entry, basically, right?
Sure. Well, and the humans are always going to be the weakest link.
Yeah.
I mean, we do as much as we can with technology. Security is a layered approach. You've got the firewalls, you've got the antivirus, you've got the spam filtering, but ultimately, nothing in technology is going to be fail-safe. And so you've got to rely on your people, and you've got to educate your people, and you have to make sure that they are actually doing their training.
Sure.
One of the things that we ran into towards the end of last year was that the trainings were lagging as the year went on. Less and less percentage of people were getting their cybersecurity training.
Of course.
And so we actually had a lot of the GMs round up the employees that hadn't done their training, and we did in-person trainings that they weren't in depth, but they were enough to meet the requirement. And also, I think they walked away with some really good information, such as how to spot these fake emails, because quite honestly, they're not coming in misspelled and from an obviously bad source. With the AI and the ability to piece companies together and people together, they're coming through and they look legitimate. And for instance, one of them that came through, or one of them that was an example, was they took a dealer principal that had went to a certain college, and they sent him an email, we'd like you to join our alumni association, and referenced a lot of the actual things from his time in that college. And we're like, join, it's only $29. Well, boom, now they've got the credit card. They've got a credit card information, because they think I'm special.
Yeah, right. So. Right. Isn't that something that you can get in so easily? But in terms of the training, what you'll find typically is that dealers will spend a lot of their time on sales training. But when you say cybersecurity training, you kind of get that glassy-eyed look where it's like, oh my gosh, why are we doing this? And then to your point, if it's only done once a year and there's a high turnover in the business, it could be that a large number of the employees never got any cybersecurity training, right?
Sure,
and yet
sure.
they're in the dealer's employment and they don't even know what to look for. Is there a way to audit, to have a team come in? Maybe your company does that. I don't know. Do you ever go into a dealer group and do an audit from a security standpoint to say, hey, you got some real issues here and here's where they are?
So we do, not from a employee training standpoint.
Okay.
Typically, that's going to be an ongoing relationship
Okay.
because there are legal there's legal restraints against doing like phishing training, because I mean that is the ultimate training.
Yeah.
You send them fake stuff and see if they click on it,
Right.
and then you try to educate around that.
Right.
This is what you should have seen.
Sure.
This is what you should have stopped. As far as like security audits, like the whole dealership,
Yeah.
we do what's called a mini pen test, which is it's not a full penetration test. Penetration tests are required by the FTC, but a lot of times it will bring up things that dealers had no clue were there. And I have a good, for instance, there we had one that told us, well, all of our data is in our DMS. We don't hold anything here. We're not responsible. And they said, but if you feel like you think you can find something, I said, okay, well, give me 5 people. Give me a finance manager, a GM, a controller, and you pick the other 2.
Yeah.
We're going to have them run this, and it's just going to be a link in their email. They'll click it, and it's going to answer the question, what would happen if somebody clicked on something they weren't supposed to?
Yeah.
And we got a treasure trove of information.
Really?
We got, we're in Texas, or this was done in Texas, so we got a Texas Workforce Commission report that had employee names, social security numbers,
Oh boy.
what they made for the year,
Oh my
because
gosh.
this is something you have to upload to the state.
Yeah.
And so having nothing on your system, you don't really know.
Yeah.
And so, part of what, like the encryption and all these other requirements of the FTC safeguards are designed around protecting that sort of thing. But you can't just assume because it's in the DMS, you don't have any of it and you're not responsible for it, because ultimately DMS or not, you're responsible for it.
Yeah. Talk to us about the coverage. We talked a little bit about it before we got recording today, but talk to us about the insurance coverage, because I think there's a misunderstanding on that part too. Dealers think, oh, I've got that in my business insurance, and if anything should happen, they're going to pay. Maybe in the case of this CDK, where it's held up your business and it's cost you thousands or millions of dollars, and I'll just go to my State Farm or Hartford agent and they'll cut me a check for anything that I lost.
Right.
Talk to us about that.
And so insurance companies really love that,
Yeah.
because they can put this big number up, $5 million in coverage, right? So $5 million in coverage is subject to sublimits and exclusions.
Okay.
So sublimit is, it's not quite for the whole amount, and an exclusion is we just don't pay that at all. For the most part, in every evaluation we've done, and we do this as part of our managed cybersecurity and a compliance program, is that we evaluate the coverage. And one of the things that we found is that a $5 million insurance policy only had $100 million, or I'm sorry, $1 million in dependent business interruption insurance. Right. And so you think you've got the 5, you've actually got the 1. A more extreme case was we had one that had $3 million in coverage, and actually only had $500,000 in coverage, and they
just gives that dealer the false sense of security.
Absolutely, absolutely, and also it adds a little bit more urgency of, hey, okay, maybe this isn't going to be covered by insurance.
Yeah,
we need to lean on these guys to get this system back up.
That's right. That's right.
Which I think that's part of the problem with on the 19th was the pressure they were under to bring that system back up without a full security audit.
Yeah,
I think made the problem considerably worse, because they weren't willing to say it's not going to happen.
Yeah,
these things do not take, if you have a server, you have a data center that has a hardware problem, software problem, and it's down for hours,
Mm-hmm.
and you replace that, and you put it in, it comes back up, no problem.
Right.
Right? If you get a breach, you've got to do a full security audit, and you've also got to do forensics to figure out how they got in there. And then you've also got to figure out, are they still in there, or did they have the ability to still get in there?
Wow.
Now, we don't know exactly what happened that day,
Yeah.
but they did partially come back up that day.
Mm-hmm.
And one of the concerns there was that they've left something there.
Mm-hmm.
And as they began to get people to connect back, we were identifying that this was a risk, knowing that you can't do that what they needed to do in the amount of time that they did.
Yeah.
And now, of course, they're having to go back over. One of the additional things that they had done that was very concerning was that they left the data centers connected during the whole event. And so while you could log in, you could log onto the system, they were telling you, don't get on the system, don't get on the system. It's we can't guarantee the security of it, but they couldn't actually keep people off the system. And so there was always the concern of, are they even in control at this point? And
yeah.
Time will tell.
Yeah.
But that was very concerning. Now, the second time when it went down, and I contend that it's still the first time. I don't think they properly cleared it the first time.
Okay.
Possible, but a little unlikely.
Yeah.
The data centers actually did go down. You couldn't communicate with them. It was severed.
Right.
At that point, we had already severed the connection with all of our dealers. Some of them we were able to click a button and disconnect the wire going over to CDK. Some of them, especially the SD-WAN customers, had everything running through CDK, and so we had to do some little technological tricks to just stop the CDK traffic while allowing everything else to work.
Sure.
So
a dealer is counting on their DMS provider though to say, okay, you're going to be doing the heavy lifting with regard to the security of the data that's in my dealership and is coming into my dealership, right? I mean, that isn't that kind of the general thinking or the general feeling there among dealer principals that's what I got a CDK for, or that's why I have Reynolds and Reynolds, because they are managing this process and they've got just huge firewalls and security systems in place, right?
Sure.
Yeah.
And they do.
Yeah.
But the bottom line is nobody can say they can't be hacked.
Right.
The federal government gets hacked on a regular basis.
Sure.
Hospitals are getting destroyed despite throwing millions and millions of dollars at this.
Right.
And so somebody not being hacked or somebody claiming that they can't be hacked, that's just not that's not plausible.
Right.
The problem in this industry is that we've outsourced essentially a core business functionality to another company, and we've said, you're responsible for it. Well, when something like this happens and they go down, we're really left without a whole lot of options unless we go back to 1990, when I was selling cars, to continue to do business.
Sure.
And some are doing a fantastic job of it. There's a lot of people out there pivoting and selling and posting and being very encouraging.
Right.
That we can't just roll over. This is we're the car industry.
Yeah.
We are resilient, and we have seen this.
Sure.
We've seen COVID. We've been
We've
through
been
all
through a
sorts
lot.
of things. But
No question.
So the vulnerability of outsourcing the core business functionality, that's something that I would really like our industry to take a look at, in the aftermath of this.
Right. I'm sure we'll be dissecting this for some time to come.
Well,
right?
sure.
Yeah.
So, and what does that look like? Well, Microsoft's one of the biggest companies on the planet. They hold data for Fortune 5 companies, probably Fortune 10. They hold everybody's data. But the difference between them and CDK is that they say, okay, we provide the services. We're going to have our services up. We're not going to try to lose your data. We're going to protect it.
Yeah.
But ultimately, your data is your responsibility. And so there was a little bit of backlash at first when people realized they needed to back up their Office 365, Microsoft 365. They were like, why am I paying extra? Well, this is why they're paying extra.
Right. Okay.
Because if something happens with that, they can take their backup
Yeah.
and they can move it to somewhere else and be back up and running.
Right.
And that's not something that exists with these DMSs. The DMSs have exclusive control, perhaps ownership of their data. It's the customer's data. And so there needs to be a way to port this out, to back it up, to be able to protect yourself and not be victimized by the fact that they don't want to let it out there because they're afraid you're going to run to another DMS at some point.
Right.
So-
And that's a big move for a dealer. I had that discussion with a dealer just a little while ago that I said, well, is this something that's so outrageous with CDK, because he's a long time CDK? And he said, well, do you understand how big a move it is for a dealer of my size to move over to another DMS system? There's a training mechanism to it, and there's a downtime. And he goes, I just don't want to. He said, and if I were to move, then the question becomes, how sure am I that this hack isn't going to happen at the system that I just moved to?
Sure.
You know what I mean? There's
Sure.
there's no assurances
no.
in that.
No, there's not.
Right.
There's not. But when you have your data, you have options.
Yeah.
And right now, they don't have any options
Right.
other than these, the workarounds that we are doing.
Yeah.
And like I said, they're doing a great job. Nobody's rolled over and given up and thrown their hands up in the air. So,
Yeah.
I applaud my dealers for doing the best that they can under the circumstances.
Yeah,
That's
for
just
sure.
the
Very
spirit of
resilient.
it. So,
Yeah. What recommendations? You touched on a few already, but what recommendations would you have for dealers that are watching right now that go, hey, this guy's the expert that we're looking for. What should I do?
Well, I think the very first thing is that you've got to look at what you're doing. I think looking at what you're doing for FTC safeguards compliance is a good starting point.
Okay.
If you're on one of these services where it's like TurboTax, where you just log into a website and you check off all the little, these are my risks, these are my, that's not a risk assessment.
Right.
A risk assessment involves walking around, it involves evaluating your systems from a procedural, from a technological, and from a physical standpoint, and truly find your risk, because this is crazy.
Yeah.
But it's far more likely somebody's just going to
But it needs a I don't want to walk around myself and do this because I don't know what I'm looking for. I don't know what I don't know in this area. So if I'm a dealer principal, I need kind of a Mike Perkins on my team that I can go, hey, you're gonna check this to make sure that we're heading in the right direction, right?
Okay.
Yeah.
Yes. And I think a lot of that is just misunderstanding.
Yeah.
It's very common that people think, well, IT's handling this. And well,
of course.
So I have a great analogy for IT and compliance. And so if you imagine that you need to get something, let's say a baby, from one side of town to the other, right? So IT is going to accomplish that job by the quickest way possible. And so they're going to strap the baby on the back of the motorcycle, and they're going to speed through town, and they're going to get that baby there as fast as possible. Right. Well, did we accomplish it? Maybe.
Yeah.
Did we skid out and lose the cargo? Well, that's a breach.
Sure.
So cybersecurity, we're strapping the baby in a car, in a car seat.
Right.
We're driving through town, and we're going to get the baby to the destination.
Safe and sound.
Right.
Yeah.
IT is about getting things done. We are going to accomplish the goal.
Yeah.
Cybersecurity is going to make sure you accomplish the goal, but you're also going to do it safely.
Yeah.
And then if you want to throw in compliance is the car's also going to stop at the stoplights and obey the traffic laws.
Right.
So
right.
In a nutshell, that's the best analogy I can give you for these are the three things, and you need all three things if you're going to continue in the automotive business.
Right. Yeah. And it's great. It's great advice. There's no question about it, because I think that everybody is right now trying to figure out, who do I have on the team? Do I have a Mike Perkins that knows all of this stuff, knows what to look for? Do I need to get one? Do I need to train maybe my in-house IT person? Because to your point, I think everyone thinks if they have an IT director or a manager that person is the one, when in reality, you might have an eye doctor and you need an oncologist,
It's a
right?
specialist.
Yeah, specialist.
Yeah. And you know, not to blame them, because that's very common. In fact, most people don't know the difference.
Right.
So I think just kind of getting the word out of, hey, these are 3 separate functions that can't necessarily be done by the same person.
Yeah.
They can, but then you've got your qualified individual, somebody that's highly educated, reloading desktops.
Right.
And so the right tool for the right job is really the best way, and essentially is why we created this separate company, because one of the ways that they were achieving compliance was by having their IT person run the website, which is, as I said, it's the difference between TurboTax and a CPA.
Sure.
And you're talking about running TurboTax on these automotive dealerships that are worth
millions, hundreds of millions
of dollars.
Right.
So.
Right. Very interesting. Mike Perkins, Chief Information Security Officer at North Rock Cybersecurity, will give you all the information here on the screen if you want to find out more about his company and what he may be able to help you with. So this would be the time. I think everybody right now is getting their house in order, and they're trying to figure out what they have and where the holes are that they need to fill, and because they don't want to find themselves in this same situation. So thank you so much for coming in and sharing this with us.
Thanks, Jim. It was really nice to meet you.
Great. You as well. Thank you so much.